Yeah, so hi guys. Thank you so much for doing this again. Really appreciate it. We're very excited about our partnership with Magento Association and the work that we've been doing together. So yeah, it's great that we can have this conversation. So just quickly for anyone out there who doesn't know who you are, can you give us an introduction and tell us a little bit about yourselves?
Sure. I'll go ahead and start. My name is Jörg, and I've been working for Magento Association since February of this year. I have 8 years of experience in open source, and my primary roles are partnerships and community engagement.
Yeah, and I'm Matthias. I'm the executive director of Magento Association, and I have a background of roughly 20 years doing open source work, and but not only on the development side of things, but I had managerial. Is it called that way? I have management experience uh, with how to manage like open source communities and commercial entities and things like that within open source for almost 10 years now as well. So that's
Nice.
that.
And speaking of communities, for those who don't know, what is the role of the Magento Association and how does it benefit the Magento community as a whole?
I would say that it's pretty straightforward. So essentially, the Magento Association advocates for member interests, and it also facilitates the professional networking through partnerships, offers educational resources, and fosters industry best practices. So it helps members to stay current with technology, enhances their skills, and yeah, and connects them with other professionals, and thus enriching the ecosystem.
Yeah, and I think there's a big change in the past with the takeover from Adobe, where the community has to emancipate itself a little bit more than we're used to that being the case. So we have a lot of open ground that we're allowed to cover. That's the good news. The bad news is we also have to do it. So that's the change in pace this time around.
Fair enough. It's a double-edged sword, I guess. And I wanted to ask you guys about your collaboration with Mage OS, because last year, I think it was in November, that you announced that you were collaborating with Mage OS to help elevate the Magento brand and support the Magento community. So I just wanted to hear a little bit about the rationale behind that and what specific initiatives that you guys have been working on.
So it pretty much started in New York at Meet Magento New York, where we basically figured out that MageOS as some sort of competition-ish kind of thing to Magento open source as a whole makes little sense. I completely understand the, the frustration and the will to achieve something that led to this whole founding of MageOS, and I still think it's a good idea to have that. But Vinay and I figured out, hey, let's sit together and find out how we can collaborate, because never in the history ever someone said divided we're stronger. And the entire point was there's a lot of great things, a lot of momentum in MageOS, um, which should be used to benefit the Magento world as a whole. Um, and on the other hand, there's a lot of strength with Magento Association itself, with being allowed to license the trademark names, to run the logo, to run the event names, all those kind of things, and also to make merchants feel safe around Magento as an piece of their vital infrastructure. So it was kind of a no-brainer. It was more like everybody agreed, like, hey, yeah, we should do it. So it's more a question of how exactly do we do it? And so we merged a couple of teams together. There's development happening within MageOS because they are not restricted, so to speak, by rules that Adobe has to follow for compliance sake, for example. They're a big corporation, and that comes with a lot of rules. So it's not that somebody is sitting in an Adobe office and goes like, I don't like this. Um, And so the basic point is that MageOS can move faster and try out things. It's like a tech incubator kind of thing, and they're doing a really good job at that. So they're unbound by corporate restrictions, and we bring the power of the brand. That's the overall idea why the collaboration makes sense, and it's also a good separation of work, pretty much.
Nice. And Mathias, you mentioned Adobe. Why is it important that the Magento Association and MageOS have continued support from Adobe?
Well, it's their product. That's that simple as is. They obtained the license to do with Magento, the code base, whatever they want. If they decide to shut it down tomorrow, that's not nice, but legal. But they don't, and I think that's the important part. So we have Adobe's support for the code base, which is way bigger than Adobe actually gets credit for. So all the annoying parts, like updating to newer PHP versions, that's not something a developer-focused community really likes, because it's boring and tedious and blah. And Adobe does all these things, and they still give it back to the community, which is something they don't have to do. And I think that collaborating with Adobe on good terms and as a true partnership, which is what we're having right now, is crucial to having this whole thing, because otherwise we would have a more or less dead code base, which is really tough to maintain. And I mean, I went through this over years. It's always the PHP updates and keeping it backwards compatible with older PHP versions. It's a ton of work, and I'm super grateful that Adobe does this, because it also enables the community to work on more, I'd call it, creative tasks and bigger things, which are frankly more fun to do. So that's that.
I bet, yeah. Perfect. And moving on to open source, we know that open source solutions are often celebrated due to their flexibility and affordability, but there's still a lot of debate on whether they can handle the demands of enterprise level operations. So, in your view, how do open source platforms like Magento stack up against commercial products, like when it comes to critical enterprise requirements like speed, availability, and scalability? And what do you think defines an enterprise solution?
I think if you follow the common definition, an enterprise solution is or must be stable, scalable, secure, and capable of integrating smoothly with other systems. And open source platforms like Magento effectively meet these criteria. And additionally, they provide the benefits of community support, documentation extensively, and it also encourages enterprises not only to use the software, but also to actively contribute to its code base.
Yeah, I think that's really big. And I mean, most of the things is you can actually influence those critical pillars of your infrastructure. So it's not that open source scales to a certain level and then suddenly stops scaling because it's open source. The good thing is, and not only the good thing, but the unique thing about open source is that you take the software, and if it doesn't match the exact requirements your business has right now, you have the possibility to put changes into the code base. You're allowed to, which is bigger than a lot of people think. I mean, if you give me a commercial piece of software and it doesn't meet my criteria, I might have the option and the capability to change the code, but that doesn't mean I'm allowed to do that. And the third thing is that within open source, it's encouraged to do those changes. And this is where I think that stacks up really, really well. And it's also this. I think we need to talk about the term enterprise. Jörg came up with a definition that I think a lot of people follow, but enterprise used to mean really, really, really big company. It was like small company, medium-sized, big company, huge company. Okay, now we need a category above that. Oh, we'll call it enterprise. Microsoft came up with the term for their license packaging. And the thing is that for me, I'd like to add to everything that Jörg said that enterprise is also about complexity. So once you're acting globally, you have to adhere to like a million tax laws. And those are enterprise requirements. So to me, it's not about how many employees do I have or how much revenue does my company drive. That's one signal to show whether I'm part of that category, enterprise. But it's not the only one. So I think just size of the amount of employees or revenue, that's a metric, but it's not the defining metric for enterprise. So there's more things to consider.
Interesting. And also, since we're looking at it from like a merchant's point of view, I'd like to know, like, in your view, what do you think are the advantages for merchants who are cultivating a diverse ecosystem of best-in-breed partners versus those that are consolidating their whole operational and digital infrastructure into one single partner? So yeah, I'd like to know your thoughts on best-of-breed versus bundled solutions.
I think from the top of my head, the commercial benefits would first of all be cost efficiency, because you only pay for the specific parts that you need. Vendor flexibility and tailored solutions, because you can always decide what kind of functionality do you need and decide then if you need an individual development or a tailored solution rather than an out-of-the-box solution that gives you more features, but if you don't need 80% of them, right?
Well, adding to that, sorry for the interruption, but it's also code that's not there cannot be attacked. That's something I personally find really important to see. So if you're going for this Christmas tree solution, which has like 1 million features, but you only need 5 of them, there's 1 million minus 5 features that are potential attack vectors. So the fewer specialized functionality you have, it's a security thing to consider. I'm not saying it's like only use that metric, but it's one thing to consider. Sorry, Jörg, go ahead.
It gave me some time to think about scalability would be another commercial benefit, in my opinion. And you own your data and thus your investment.
Yeah, that's a big one. This is something that's often overlooked. And I guess on a technical side of things, there's also a couple benefits. Like I mean, owning your data is way more important than you think. So think about the absolute disaster scenario. Your SaaS solution provider is out of business from one day to the next. We shut down. What happened? And I mean, if I take a look at something like when Google stopped Google Wave, I mean, some people might remember that a lot of people started using it. Were like, hey, this is awesome, perfect. They built their businesses around it. And then Google said, oh, by the way, we're shutting it down next week. And people were like, what? What's happening? And yeah, there's always the argument that you can do like a CSV export of your products and your customers, yada yada. But if you're honest to yourself, when was the last time you backed up your Gmail mailbox? Right? Because Time Machine won't help you with that. And your local Windows backup won't help you with that either. So again, it's not like a doomsday scenario or a make or break decision, but it's one thing to consider, pretty much. I mean, on the technical side of things, Jörg, do you have any?
Well, I mean, it basically boils down to being very similar to the commercial benefits. I think one of the major technical benefits would be specialization. Would you agree?
Definitely. I mean, if you can customize the code, it doesn't get more special than that. And in the end, I mean, this is also something, you know, you have this generic bundled solutions, right? Generic is the polar opposite of specialized. It's in the definition of the word. So if you go for something generic and it fits your bill, fine, but this will then be what your e-commerce platform is, generic. And if you want to optimize things, you might not be able to do that. You cannot specialize in something that's generic. It's like they're both mutually exclusive. And you might also be affected by something like, I mean, this whole scenario that I set up is your SaaS solution provider goes out of business. That's like the absolute worst case, right? But they might shut down that one API that you need to use. And then you have like the press release, oh, we shut this down because not many people were using it. Well, that's not really helping you if you were one of the few that was relying on that being in place. And this is why I think open source solutions in particular, or at least self-hosted stuff, is something really to consider when thinking about which infrastructure or platform to use. A lot of things that the marketing does not tell you. What if things go wrong?
Yeah. And yeah, it makes sense. I guess from what you're saying, that it gives you freedom and more flexibility than a bundled solution would as well.
True. With the downside, also responsibility. It's your data, you own it, then you also have to own it. So you need to make sure that your data center is safe, yada yada. But there's like a million providers that help you do that because they specialize in that, but you still own the data and you can access the data. You can move between providers. I mean, think about that. There's no way to move between SaaS providers, you know. But if you don't like agency X or hosting company B or whatever anymore, you can just move. It's choice. It's a lot of freedom and choice that you have, and that creates longevity, I think.
Nice. Thanks for that. And now going back to Magento Association, I'm not sure how much you guys can give away, but are you able to talk a little bit about your strategy and key objectives for the next year or two?
It becomes more blurry the further in the future we look, but that's plans. No, but the next big things that we're working on is we have board elections coming up, so people can prepare to hand in their candidacy as a new board member. We are in the process of getting the Magento marketing website done, because that's what we're currently missing. There's no dedicated official website that highlights the benefits of Magento to the world, and we're trying to not trying, but we're hoping to get even more people on board that help out creating that website. That's where the community could really help and shine. That we get that thing out there, because Adobe, it's not necessarily within Adobe's interest to create a website like that. That being said, it's not that Adobe blocks it or anything like it. It's simply that they don't have the need for that. It's just as much as Adobe is not really interested in prices of milk. It's not on their radar at all. But it should be on our radar. And as part of that, we also want to create a directory of solution providers that could be agencies, tech integrators, freelancers. So merchants have like a one-stop solution to look for support within the Magento ecosystem. This is what we think is necessary. Again, because Adobe focuses on their partner program, which is all fair game, absolutely understandable. However, for the Magento ecosystem and community, we need something on our own. And we're currently in the phase where we're outlining the entire project, and then we hope that the Magento community jumps on board and helps developing it. And so coding is something that we can use a lot of help with, but luckily we have a lot of great developers in this community. So it's like a pick and choose for us, which is really, really great. What else are the big things? Well, ultimately, we want to have our own big global conference. That's like the super big, hairy, ambitious goal that we that we have out there, that we want to do. what else do we have on the list? We would like to get Magento certifications. So not Adobe Commerce certifications, but dedicated Magento certifications back. And there's already something in the works with some well-known people from the community. In that regard, we want to have a karma-based point system. So whoever contributes something to Magento as a whole can accumulate karma points, and it shouldn't only be like maybe monetary things like funding our work is great, but we also want to be able to have a really ambitious person to be able to collect even the same amount of points simply by talking about Magento, handing in case studies, writing blog posts, attending events, spreading the news, all those kind of things that we all want this to accumulate into karma point system kinda. And we want to do this like twofold. So we want to have an individual ranking, so individuals can get on top of the list, and then once per year or quarter or whatever, they get like dedicated swag for themselves, like a small trophy or a t-shirt, things like that to show off. But we also want to make that available for companies. So whoever grabs the most points over the course of the year can walk home with their own trophy and put it up in their conference room for all the clients to see. And it's marketing, but it's also fun. So these are like the big things that we're working on.
Nice. Yeah, it does sound like you have a bunch of fun and exciting things coming up. So looking forward to seeing those. Nice.
We're not short on ideas. It's more like the days are too short for it.
Fair enough. And well, what many people may not know is that alongside the fantastic work that you've been doing at Magento Association, you also find the time for a second role. You're both dance artists and DJs. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Do you want to start, or would you
I'm
want me
just
to go
wondering.
first?
I just want to clarify. So we're not dancers. For the audience that don't know, right? So
The
I wanted to make
genre
the
thing.
same
we're
disclaimer.
producing the music. I got like Cirque du Soleil vibes here. Well, I started making music in the mid '90s and also started DJing back in the mid '90s. And it's I mean, music has always been around the house. My parents used to have like a krautrock rock band in the '70s, and just yesterday my dad came up with like old photographs of me like turning knobs on a synthesizer at the age of 1. So that's where that comes from. Making the time is that's the tricky part. Luckily, my family supports this overly ambitious hobby of mine, so I don't go clubbing all night anymore. It's actually the body goes like, not gonna happen. So the last time I had to play like a 5-hour set, I really hopped off the stage like with my holding my bag and going like, oh God, okay, 5 hours is way more than I can handle. But it's still fun though. And I think it's the closest to playing live music. I mean, I'm executive director of Magento Association first, musician second, fatherhood comes somewhere in there, but you get the point. And DJ third, right? And I tried playing live back in the day, but it's so much hassle. It's totally impractical. And DJing is the second closest thing that comes to it. Like interacting with an audience, that's where the fun is for me. Jörg, how about you?
You almost covered the same vibe goes for me. So I was always very interested, grew up around a lot of genres, was very influenced by the music my parents and my friends listened to, and I tried to get my hands on every tape, vinyl record, or later on CD I could get my hands on. And I also started creating electronic music during the mid to late '90s, and because of fascination for synthesizers and drum machines and so on. And it's for me, how do I make up the time? For me, creating music has always been kind of a creative sanctuary, so to speak. It's like my Zen place where I go when I just want to chill out and just relax, and yeah,
That's
recharges the
also the
batteries
case.
somehow.
Yeah, It's also when I'm in the studio producing, it's like all the kids know, hey, leave Dad alone for now. He's in his happy place.
He's in the zone. Nice. And well, guys, as part of Akoova's and Magento Association's collaboration, we are launching a campaign called Magento Open For Life. And as part of that, you have created a new track. And we are keeping some of the details top secret for the big reveal on Meet Magento. But can you tell us a little bit about the track and the inspiration behind it?
No, it's a secret.
Yeah, that's classified. I would need to see a security clearance first. No, I mean, what it basically boils down to, at least for me, Matthias, please stop me if this doesn't align with you, but it's like viewing the Magento community through the lens of clubhouse music, good rhythm, a positive vibe, and a great bass line, basically. So I just hope maybe it inspires other musicians from the community to maybe even, release some music on their own or share with everyone. Because that's what open source is also, right?
Yeah. And I mean, it's the overall thing was I mean, there's also the pure production aspect to it. Is how do you create a track that you think is so fitting to that broad, diverse community? We could have picked up guitars and do like, I don't know, like a thrash metal thing, but then it's really hard on people who like to travel to Ibiza for the summer. So it's not the harshest thing we've created so far. Definitely not.
It is one perspective.
Exactly. It's one part of that. But I can just say, hey, join Meet Magento UK for the big reveal. That might be the interesting part, and then we keep the rest a secret.
Fair enough. And guys, you and the Magento Association were super keen to join forces with Akoova for Magento Open For Life campaign. Why is this so important for Magento Association?
I think it's three things. So the first thing is that when Akoova approached me, because Jörg wasn't in the office at the time, it was like, we need to understand that, coming back to what I said earlier, we need to understand that we are in charge of the marketing stuff around Magento. We cannot wait for anyone. It's us, it's the community, it's all of us. And Akoova understood that and then came up with, hey, by the way, I think the conversation was along the lines of like, hey, we think we should do something. And I was like, yes, absolutely, you got it. And then not only realizing and internalizing that, but also stepping up to it and saying, hey, you know what? It's not that we just think we should do something. We will actually do something, which is that's how open source works for me, or at least in my book. Who delivers is right. That's how open source works in its essence. And then pair that with the idea of making like a track around it, which is not bought off some producer, but which is built by someone from the community. This is all grassroots. Love it. Still love it, even though it was very little sleep during the production phase because of a very tight deadline, which was none of our faults.
No, but you did an amazing job. So
glad you like
it. Yeah. That's great. And guys, finally, if anyone who's listening to us wants to become a member of Magento Association, what steps should they take?
Well, if you're interested in joining Magento Association, memberships options are available on our website, hub.magentoassociation.org. But we offer much more, of course. We also offer dedicated sponsorships, and we also offer partnerships. So that's also something to look at. And if you should have any questions in that regard, whether it's about the memberships or the other things we offer, you can always also contact us via email at info@magentoassociation.org. and just get in touch with us, talk with us, bring in your ideas, your questions, whatever you have.
Or stop by the shared booth in London in July. Should mention that.
Yeah. Yes, we're going to be at a shared booth on Meet Magento UK. So yeah, come along and say hi.
I wasn't sure if this was part of the secret.
Was it? No, well,
I don't know. That's why I just strategically didn't.
Akoova is sponsoring the thing, so I think Akoova should be there, right? Sounds beneficial.
It's okay. And is there anything you guys would like to add? Any final remarks? Up to you.
No, I think we covered pretty much everything. I mean, anyone who wants to contribute, now is the time. I mean, there will always be the time, but now is a really good time because I think we can move a lot of things right now. And yeah, that should be that. Thanks for the interview.
Yeah, thank you so much for doing this. This was great.
You're welcome.
Thanks so much, guys.